and welcome to LTV News. I'm Stephanie J. Bevington and these are today's top stories. Gaza hospitals receive airstrike casualties. Myanmar set to free 452 prisoners ahead of Obama's visit. David Cameron meets Mario Monti on economy talks. Let's start with some news from the Middle East. Emergency services in Gaza today have been tending the wounded as Israel continues its air and naval assault on the Strip. It's believed that 13 Palestinians have been killed, including women and children, and as the following report explains, that number is now expected to rise.
Medical staff in Gaza's hospitals today tended to Palestinians wounded and killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes. 13 Gazans, including 3 children, have so far been killed by Israeli strikes. The Hamas government said about 100 were wounded. More than 100 airstrikes pounded Gaza throughout the night, and 3 members of a Hamas rocket crew were killed. Also among the dead were a baby and a woman pregnant with twins. Tel Aviv said it had destroyed much of Gaza's long-range rocket stockpiles, an assertion seemingly confirmed when Hamas's claims of hits on ambitious targets like the capital proved false.
Remaining on the topic in Gaza, despite the ongoing violence and repeated attacks, over 1,000 people marched at the funeral of Ahmed al-Jabari today. As Tel Aviv continues its assault on the Gaza Strip, Hamas also continued firing rockets in the south of Israel, killing 3 people. The deaths are likely to intensify in Israel's military operations, causing fear that both sides may be heading to war.
Hamas fired dozens of rockets into southern Israel today, killing 3 people, and Israel launched numerous airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, threatening a wider offensive to halt repeated attacks. The Israeli police said that 3 died when a Palestinian rocket hit a 4-story building some 15 miles north of Gaza. They were the first Israeli fatalities of the latest conflict to hit the coastal region. Israeli government spokesperson Mark Regev condemned the attack. The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting late yesterday to discuss the Israeli assault. It called for a halt to the violence, but took no action. Expecting days of more fighting, Israel warned Hamas that all of its men were in its sight and dropped leaflets in Gaza telling residents to keep their distance from militants and Hamas facilities. Hamas has said the killing of its top commander Ahmed al-Jabari would open the gates of hell for Israel. It also appealed to neighboring Egypt to halt the barbaric assault.
Egypt's foreign minister condemned yesterday a series of Israeli strikes that killed a top Hamas commander in the Gaza Strip and urged the Jewish states to end them immediately. The Egyptian foreign minister told reporters that Egypt strongly condemns Israel airstrikes and killing of civilians in Gaza. The attacks mark the biggest escalation between Israel and Gaza militants since the 2008 to 2009 conflict and came despite signs on Tuesday that neighbouring Egypt had managed to broker a truce in the enclave after a 5-day surge in violence. Moving on to world news now. Myanmar released prisoners today in a goodwill gesture ahead of a historic visit to the former ministry state by US President Barack Obama. However, activists and the main opposition party said there seemed to be no more political detainees among them. State media said that 452 prisoners would be freed with the intent to help and promote goodwill and the bilateral relationship. Over the past year and a half, Myanmar has released about 800 political prisoners as part of a dramatic reform programme, but it is believed that it is still holding several hundred. Obama will become the first US president to visit Myanmar during a November tour of Southeast Asia. There were violent protests across European nations last night, as many were angry over more planned austerity cuts. Portugal saw some of the worst, with thousands gathering outside the country's parliament, attacking the building with rocks and bottles.
Anti-austerity protests outside the Portuguese parliament building yesterday ended violently as police charged at demonstrators after they hurled stones and Molotov cocktails at them for over an hour. Thousands of demonstrators had gathered at the foot of the parliament early in the day for a peaceful protest in the capital, where Portuguese unions had called for a march to mark the second general strike in a year. But skirmishes soon erupted when protesters kicked down barriers set up to prevent their access. The rally grew increasingly violent, with protesters hurling stones and burning bottles at the police. Several people were arrested on the scene. The demonstration that ended the general strike day was the first one with such violent clashes. Portuguese workers intended to stage a peaceful walkout to protest against austerity measures implemented after Portugal asked for a €78 billion bailout last year.
Millions of people worldwide will have to take their Toyota vehicles back to the dealership after the company announced it will recall over 2 million vehicles. It's believed that a steering glitch is the case of the recall, and many are now questioning Toyota's safety measures. Now here's some finance news. British Prime Minister David Cameron met with Italian Prime Minister Mario Monti in Rome for a discussion, with the two leaders expected to focus on the European economy. Earlier in the day, Cameron stopped off in Holland for a 45-minute meeting with Prime Minister Mark Rutte, which he sought to shore up support in the fight against the EU budget hikes. The British Prime Minister has threatened to veto the EU's 7-year budget, fueling a perception among many in Europe that London is casting itself adrift from the 27-nation union. Now for some sports news. A stunning 30-metre shot by Qatar striker Sebastian Soria lit up the game of poor quality as the hosts edged past Lebanon with a 1-0 in the World Cup, qualifying yesterday. Both Qatar and Lebanon were attempting to qualify for the first World Cup, yet both teams seemed short of the quality required. That was until Soria was given too much freedom to drive forward in a rare lapse by the otherwise unassured visitors' back line. The goal relaxed the home side and they played out with final minutes with greater confidence. Next up for Qatar is a tough trip to South Korea in March, and Lebanon go on to challenge Uzbekistan. Now let's take a look at the world of arts and culture. Rock and roll king Elvis Presley is seen holding a news conference ahead of his New York concerts in 1972 in a newly released DVD. Presley could be seen joking with journalists as he arrived for the news conference, one of the last conferences he would do before his death 5 years later.
I hear from a lot of people in the press corps that you really are a shy, humble, wonderful human being. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know what makes them think that. You know, this gold belt and
Members of the boy band One Direction have taped an appearance on The Ellen Show. Harry, Zayn, Neil, Liam and Lois performed for the audience packed with young girls who screamed in excitement at virtually everything the boys had to say. Harry revealed his new tattoo, 2 birds across his chest, and said he chose it because it was sailory. The episode is scheduled to air later today. That's all we have time for today, but before we go, let's take a look back over today's top stories. Gaza hospitals receive airstrike casualties. Myanmar set to free 452 prisoners ahead of Obama's visit. David Cameron meets Mario Monti on economy talks. Thank you for watching. For more information, do visit our website on www.levant.tv. Join us tomorrow at the same time. Until then, from all of us at LTV News, goodbye.